Welcome to another episode of the Underground Bunker Podcast. Yes, I have Mark Ebner back because, it's Mark Ebner. I had to have you back, dude. How are you?
Good. It's really cozy in here in the bunker or the closet or whatever, wherever we're broadcasting from. I think you get the reference there. I'm doing all right.
Well,
How we
now,
doing, Tony?
all the news
Coast to
out
coast.
coast to coast. I'm in New York, you're in LA, and of course, all the news I hear coming from LA is about these strikes. What's are you affected by any of that going on right now? All the writers are striking, the actors are striking.
Well, I'm affected in that I see a lot of my friends and colleagues out of work, but doing the right thing for sure. I'm happy that the actors headed up by Fran Jesh, what's her name, Fran Drescher, as the head of Screen Actors Guild, came out with a really passionate plea for solidarity there. And I think it's going to be the talent that forces the producers into a fair contract for everyone. It's one thing to have so many tens of thousands of writers, but when you get up in the hundreds of thousands of actors, that's really putting the producers to the fire. So as far as I'm concerned, I have to say it's a boon for my work. Dealing in working in the nonfiction documentary space. I'm fielding calls on a daily basis. Whether or not they'll materialize into anything, that's a whole other story. But needless to say, I'm busy as a result, for sure,
Well,
because they
speak
got to program these streamers somehow, right?
Right. Well, maybe
Yeah.
that will help the documentary side. Speaking of which, I've been hearing from a couple of my friends. They really enjoyed your work in the documentary. Last time we talked, we were talking about your book that the pool boy.
Off the deep end. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
And I think your book came out just before the documentary, and so now some people have gotten to see the documentary, and I've been hearing some good things about you in there.
That was as directed by my pal Billy Corbin, who put me in touch with Giancarlo Granda, the quote unquote pool boy in the first place. It couldn't have worked out better. And I was certainly there for shooting my mouth off on, God forbid, the Hulu documentary, which, by the way, is still the most viewed documentary on Hulu in the history of that streamer.
Wow.
So, it beat out Firefest. So that'll give you an idea of what people are putting their eyes on. It's sort of like, everybody's gonna watch the heterosexual Tom Cruise in his Mission Impossible, number 9 point whatever. I don't even know how many of installments they've done of that franchise. But to be honest, I'd rather slide nude down a razor blade into a pool of alcohol than give any time to that movie. And it's not just because the heterosexual Tom Cruise is a Scientologist. It's just that I don't want to sound like too much of a snob, but when I think of spy thrillers, Tom Cruise doesn't even come to mind. Give me a North by Northwest or The Conversation.
Oh, the
Or,
conversation. Oh,
we could go on and list our favorite spy thrillers. But, you know, and I don't even claim to be a cineast, but it's certainly something I can sink my teeth into. I'm just not, I wouldn't be amused by watching Tom Cruise, the heterosexual Tom Cruise, do all his stunts. Big deal. Great. He will jump off a cliff. He'll do what speed sailing or whatever the stuntery that he claims to be doing. I'm sure it's all fantastic and enjoyable for people that, especially people of the TikTok generation who have no concern for, actual story and dialogue and that sort of thing. And it pains me to say that because, as I think uh, Cruz's writer and director is, an old pal of mine, and I believe at least an acquaintance of yours, Christopher McQuarrie, who has gone.
I don't know the guy. Tell me
Oh,
about
okay.
this. I didn't know you knew him. Tell me about that.
Oh, yes. I was in his wedding. I mean, he during the 90s, 94, 95, I met him in an AOL chat room called Hollywood Interrupted. And I get no, not Hollywood Interrupted.
That's the name of your book.
Yeah, the Hollywood Cafe. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
It's
Okay.
Friday. It's happy hour. Yeah, it was called the Hollywood Cafe. And this entity sent me an AOL instant message saying, "Hey, I hear you're a rat for the once great magazine Spy." And I go, "Yeah, what about it?" And he goes, "Prove it." So I opened up the latest issue of Spy. We still, we're killing trees for our journalism back then, right? And I opened it up and I showed him the photo of me in the contributor section. And we made an arrangement to meet at a movie theater. We went to see, I think it was in Century City, we went to see the Brothers McMullen. And I'm standing in line and I feel a tap on my shoulder. And I turn around and there's this big Irish galoot, this kid, no more than 24 years old, standing there. And I say, "Hey, man, nice to meet you," And, it hadn't fully sunk in that this guy was the soon to be Academy Award winner for the movie The Usual Suspects Best Original Screenplay. And that kid was going to be the youngest ever to receive that award at 25 years old.
Wow.
Needless to say, we became instant friends, and we had a good run in that friendship until, and here's where I made a mistake. Years later, he's since married, moved to Washington State with his wife, Heather, and Hollywood Interrupted came out. And I remember walking to his house down by Lake Washington, beautiful spread. And I went in and I was, I'm obviously physically in the Pacific Northwest myself at the time. And he's got his head in his hands and he's reading, about the heterosexual Tom Cruise, repeated over and over and over again. And unbeknownst to me, he was just then starting to form a relationship with Cruise. And so we kind of kissed goodbye on that. I wasn't quite sure what his relationship was with Cruise was, but I had a stinking feeling that that was the reason why he just kind of was, beside himself and wondering, how he was, maybe not even wondering, perhaps he didn't care. When you're looking at a franchise like Tom Cruise, anybody in Hollywood will tell you that, yeah, sorry, you guys lost your friendship over Cruise, but hey, that's business. Except, Tony, that may be business, but that's not me. If you're my friend, you're my friend. And, I'm not going to let business get in the way of a good friendship if I possibly can. That's just me. So my last communication with Chris McQuarrie, and we'll jump off that, is simply I got him on the phone. I was back in LA and I said, "Hey, Chris," I said, I understand that, this is kind of the big kiss off here. And I have the feeling it has to have to do with your relationship with Tom Cruise? And he goes, oh, no, that's not it. And his voice drifted off. We hung up the phone, and I knew it would be the last time I spoke to him. And I'll be honest with you, I miss him because he's a funny motherfucker. He's a just, he's talented. And, that's the irony here, given that we're talking about a movie which, in all fairness, I haven't seen yet, Mish, and I have no plans to see it. It's I honestly would expect greatness, and from all accounts, in terms of story, dialogue, and just script writing in general, it took two screenwriters to put together the action fest showcase of a 60-plus-year-old Tom Cruise doing stunts.
He's 61.
Yeah, 61, 60 plus. Yeah.
Well, let me give you two points about Macquarie, and then I'm gonna get your reaction to this.
Sure.
First, Luke Thompson, Luke. I asked him, he gave me a review of the movie, which I published last week. And in it, he called Macquarie, he was talking about this remarkable relationship, and he called Macquarie a cruise whisperer extraordinaire. And that he's got this special, relationship with him. And then the other data point is this. I first found out about Cruise getting this double floor condo, 9th and 10th floor on the top of this building that's in the Flag Land Base in Clearwater, Florida, literally 5-minute walk from where David Miscavige is, right? That Cruise, this building was being refurbished and by a Mexican Scientologist, wealthy Mexican Scientologist developer, and that Cruise was getting the top 2 floors for this special penthouse. He had a special car garage, an air bridge, super fancy stuff. Okay, I broke that news years and years ago. Well, Chris White I forget who he was writing for, the Baby Daily Mail. He did a really good piece where he looked at the other units in the building that he found that, for example, Cruise had also bought a unit for his mom. Unfortunately, she died before the building was finished. But also his sisters have condos in that building. And so does Chris McQuarrie.
Joined at the hip, I guess. It's baffling to me because part of the reason why Macquarie and I became friends in the first place was my infinite skepticism, especially when it came to, he knew that, years before we met, not really, but he knew that, I was, right up there in terms of the critical community of Scientology. It makes you wonder. If he's actually going to have that much proximity, day in, day out with Tom Cruise, who's zooming who? Who's the whisperer here? It may well be Tom Cruise. And for all I know, Chris, against all my, thinking, based on having known the guy as well as I did, could it be that Macquarie is indeed a Scientologist?
That's a good question. He's apparently got a condo in the Flag Land Base.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't surprise me. That's a good find. I wasn't aware of that, but it doesn't surprise me at all. They're, it's, I guess they're creating such fortune, in their cinema enterprise that, it only, who else are you going to hang out with to celebrate with? I know Tom is showing up in Atlanta and Washington, D.C. and all the cities where it's premiering and being that man of the people and the fans. But I'm always that guy who will do what I can, whether it's via social media. Whenever this guy's got a movie coming out, it's incumbent upon me to remind people, your listeners already know the drill, but that Tom Cruise is indeed the front guy for the criminal cult of Scientology. And, every time, he comes out with a high profile project and nobody's putting his feet to the fire, because how carefully organized Cruise's PR really is. He's a master at evading questions about that. You go to a junket for Tom Cruise, and I've been at these junkets and got hauled out on my ass for bringing up the Scientology question, but they got roadblocks everywhere you look, and he's not going to get sandbagged, about that. And so that's my position is that the more popular he is, the more unfortunate people are going to get lured into his cult. Now, if you disavowed the cult, and logic defies, in the face of everything that I'm sure he knows about it, if he had disavowed the cult, then I just wouldn't have a problem. Doesn't mean I'd want to go see his huge movie franchise, because as we said, I expect more from a spy thriller than just stunts and special effects. That's just a personal thing. But then on the other hand, who knows? There is the side that you and I would probably agree on, and that would be Tom fucking Cruise does not know black from white. And he is so deeply indoctrinated that he probably thinks he could survive a mishap going off a cliff on a motorcycle, or that he's a body dropper, meaning that, he has no regard for human life, in his own carcass. Does that make sense?
No, I know, but that makes me wonder, was he shocked when he was injured? Remember?
He broke an arm or
broke
something,
an ankle,
right?
or something when he was jumping onto that building or something. And I wonder if that shocked him. It's like, hey, I'm OT8. This shouldn't happen to me.
Right. Good question. But remember, now that becomes a marketing tool. You'll see quotes. Honest to God, if you look up Cruise, talking about how dangerous this was and that was, he'll say, I got broken bones. It's another line of promotion, much like I do all my own stunts, which is kind of offensive because I never hear him thank the stunt coordinator on any of those movies. Let's call a spade a shovel, right? He's out there doing great stunt work. There's no doubt about it for a 61-year-old, but at the same time, there's a thing called completion bonds, movie insurance. I know he's powerful enough to be a shot caller on his own movies, but at the end of the day, there's a qualified professional assessing the risk involved, because there are people crunching numbers back at the studio, assessing that risk. So yeah, it's there's a bit of smoke and mirrors in how this whole thing is being marketed. But once again, that's coming from a guy who is not a fan of Cruise as an actor per se. I've always argued, and a lot of people don't agree with me on this. They'll say, oh, he was great and Born on the 4th of July or whatever. But, a good looking guy on camera can mock up tears. I think you and I have had this discussion again.
Well, I was going to ask you this. I was going to bring it up with you again, because when you raised that question last time, and I heard from people that thought that this was a very interesting point you made, and that is, that Scientologists have this, they talk about this reactive mind and getting rid of the reactive mind and going clear. And I think you raised the question, how does a Scientologist actor, if acting's all about reaction,
right,
how do you act without a reactive mind? You can explain it better than I explained that. Explain
Well,
what
I
you meant.
just think on the, if you're following whether it's the Milton Casellas Beverly Hills Playhouse thing, it's basically mocking up your own reality, and that means if the scene calls for you to cry, you may not have an emotion attached, but from the school of Alfred Hitchcock, who North by Northwest, I've got to plug that 1959 spy thriller again. But if you talk to someone like the ghost of Alfred Hitchcock, he'd tell you these actors, they're fucking cattle. There's another guy, it would be, oh God, he's a French director, Bresson, would say, he'd go beyond Hitchcock and he'd say, look, they're just working models in front of a camera. So who would be better suited than a working model such as Tom Cruise, who, to his credit, has managed to defy his own age and still exist as, the quintessential movie star. Now, the acid test to whether or not Tom Cruise can act is put him on a fucking stage and watch him fall apart. Because whereas the camera never blinks, to use a cliche, the audience never blinks in live theater. That's why if you're hoking it or mugging it or mocking up some reality and you're not projecting that from what would you call it, an emotional center per se, then you're not acting, and you can't pull that over on a sophisticated audience. That's why you don't see Scientology actors on stage. Rarely, if ever. And it's because they can't fucking act. That's really it. And, I'll argue that all day because Tom Cruise, if acting calls for emotion and depth of emotion, not to project, but to just have your entire being imbued by that, Tom Cruise doesn't qualify. Why? Because he's emotionless. Why? Because he's humorless. We see evidence of that. He doesn't even have a sense of humor about himself. To be offended by his treatment, in the South Park episode, Trapped in the Closet, he had a cameo in there where he jumped in the closet, where and Travolta came down and jumped in the closet with him. That was a hilarious trope, but the guy's trapped in his own facade, and so once again, from the top, I'm in no rush to go out and, get in a crowded movie theater to see a bunch of impressive stunt work. It's now, and I don't know how many people are. Honestly, it's the reviews are uniformly pretty, the kind of reviews you would want. Now, what's the motivation for everyone kissing this franchise's ass? Well, there's really nothing much else out there. And with the strike, as you brought up earlier, there ain't much in the pipeline. So they better get behind the industry that keeps them employed. And now there's the argument that if I talk to crew people and stuff, they'll say, fuck, I don't care what Tom Cruise believes in. He gives us a lot of jobs. But I'm not sure, I need this to be fact checked, but I'm not sure he gives that as many U.S. jobs as you think. It seems to me, and I could be wrong, but it seems to me that this franchise work is all done overseas. And, I may be wrong in that, but it's an easy check on IMDb for anyone who wants to jump into that.
I understand exactly where you're coming from. It's not my kind of movie either. Neither is Top Gun. But I guess for me, it's okay with me if he's a very good actor, and he has done some pretty cool things over the years. I don't care if he's a good actor or not. I don't really care that much about the success. Look, you can tell as they're promoting this movie, they know they have something that the people who like these kind of movies, they're going to like it. You know, you can tell by their confidence in the way they're marketing that they know their audience is going to go in and they're going to be happy. That's fine. That's all fine. I don't care about any of that. If I was actually in the man's presence, I wouldn't ask him about any of that. I just want to know, where the fuck is Surrey? What the fuck? This beautiful young woman is your daughter, and you have completely cut her out of your life. And, you know, the thing about it, I try to explain to people, in Scientology, yes, if they were just a rank and file Scientologist, he would probably be required to disconnect from her because of all the way, the bad publicity they got. But he's not rank and file. He's a celebrity. He can violate those rules. He can see Surrey anytime he wants. So why doesn't he? Because he personally has chosen Scientology over his own beautiful daughter. And it's just insane to me that he never has to answer a question about that. Isn't that crazy? But like you said, he makes it impossible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, that's, I will say this, that, you know, I really hope that, Surrey Cruz, you know, her mom is the best mom ever and is overcompensating for him not being in her life. We can only hope that. By the way, anecdote, The Way of the Gun, Chris McQuarrie, that film, that, you know, was his follow-up, to Usual Suspects. He had done some writing with Bryan Singer on some, you know, some big movies, but his signature piece, The Way of the Gun, starring Benicio del Toro, and Ryan Philippe, and, you know, just Nicky Katt and a bunch of other talent. I have a cameo in that movie in the very beginning. I play Mr. Hubbard, and I am a sperm donor. And it clear as day, these guys are at the sperm bank, and here I come walking out of a little curtained off room, and the doctor who's collecting my sperm sample, I put it down on the table, and he says, "Thank you, Mr. Hubbard." There was an inside Scientology joke that will haunt him for the rest of his life at the very beginning of The Way of the Gun. For sound bites only, I only wish you'd pull the clip. Now, also to note that Chris, as crazy as he was, there wasn't one, but there was two lifelong Scientologists starring in that movie. Juliette Lewis and her father, Jeffrey. You know, so I mean, it was a hat trick of just cluster fuckery, you know, but that was something we had fun with, you know, and it made the cut.
What would you say qualifies you as a donor?
I would say I am a fairly intelligent, good-looking man, physically fit, stable.
Thank you, Mr. Herman.
You know, so it makes me wonder. I mean, wouldn't that have made Chris McQuarrie suppressive? Something like that? No, because, you know, first of all, you know, I think that the movie, as good as I thought it was, wasn't popular enough to really have people put those things together. Does that make sense?
Sure.
It doesn't, you know, but to know that, there is a perverse pleasure in me taken from the fact that I play a sperm donor.
And what year was that?
It was, I would say 2000 something. The Way of the Gun. Benicio del Toro,
Right.
Ryan Philippe, Juliette Lewis, Jeffrey Lewis, Nicky Katt. And I got another problem, another small, quick bone to pick on Mission Impossible, whichever one this is right now. Esai Morales. Esai Morales is playing the heavier, the bad guy. I can't speak to his performance on that. I just have a little problem, and it's like, I mean, anecdotally, he starred in a movie that was based on a book I co-wrote with a woman named Jane Garcia Valseca. It was called We Have Your Husband. It was a Lifetime movie, and he played her husband, a kidnapping victim. And he did a formidable job for a TV movie of the week type thing, and I got a nice bonus check out of it. So I shouldn't have these sour grapes. But Esai came out as an anti-vaxxer. And I just had it with these people because you
That's
know me,
right.
there's not much celebrities are disallowed from telling me, but I don't want to hear who they think I should vote for, who I should be praying to, or I don't want to take fucking medical advice from Esai Morales, some kooky anti-vaxxer. That's the only other bone I have to pick in this conversation.
I don't think Cruz has said anything one way or the other about that, and that the Church of Scientology's official line is a little murky on that. But there's no question that most of the Scientologists that I keep tabs on and social media stuff are all anti-vaxxers. It's very popular in Scientology to be anti-mask, anti-vaccine, and they're all
Anti-government and I'm sure there's a virulent strain of MAGA throughout Scientology. I know it exists in the apostate community.
Yeah.
So, and quite often you see that weird overlap, and you're like, Jesus Christ, you got out of one cult and you jumped into another. What's going on?
Well, people, I think, make the assumption that because it's California and Florida, that it's probably this left wing thing. But no, Hubbard was a right wing reactionary from, classic red baiter, and Scientology's always been more right leaning. Now, you will find some liberal Scientologists, it's true, but for mostly Scientologists tend to lean right, and they're the Alex Jones type. They're the conspiracy type, that kind of thing. I mean, I see it all the time in their social media feeds.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hubbard himself told the apartheid South African government that Scientology was a rightist organization. So that shows you where he was.
Yeah. And it's once again, it's sort of like just based on instinct. When you run into a Scientologist, especially one with lanyards and the full dress, that fucking smirk on their face, that just like, I know it all, we know everything, we don't want this whole like that. That to me is what I find in people that can't listen to reason, logic, facts, or science. And I've just had it. But you know what, Tony? I'm determined to have a good time in spite of these motherfuckers. I'm just not going to let them get me down. Not Robert F. Kennedy. His own family fucking hates him, and yet at the same time, he's fixing to be a big spoiler in what's to come.
Well, and let's talk the connection there, because Scientology, one of their first, I don't know, one of their first, but one of the early ideal orgs was Inglewood. And they not only opened that up, but they opened up a community center there. And this was Miscavige's idea about reaching out to the Black community. And then what they have done there is they've really preyed on some of these fears about vaccines and stuff that tend to be, and you can understand it more because of the history, right? But there was actually a anti-vaccine summit there years before the pandemic. This had nothing to do with COVID-19.
Wow.
With Tony Muhammad from the Nation of Islam.
Yep.
Alfredi Johnson from the Church of Scientology, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at the Scientology Community Center in Inglewood.
It's rarely you'd see that, that many conspiracy freaks and geeks in one room. And that does, wow, I didn't know that.
Was years ago. That was years ago. And like I said, way before the pandemic.
Yeah. Well, my line when it comes to when Scientology tries to recruit the brothers and the sisters in our world, I just tell them, what a brother told me outside Big Blue one day when I was walking around doing research, as it were, undercover for Do You Want to Buy a Bridge, the Spy magazine story, which pretty much made my career and, made me PTS type 3 ultimate suppressive godhead or whatever. But I'm giving myself too much credit. But I asked this black guy, I go, I've been going in and out of here all day. And these people are all pasty white around Big Blue. And he goes, well, you kidding me? He goes, brothers can spot a shell game a mile away. And, that was it. That's what it boils down to. The Ponzi of Scientology, and yet it only made sense that they would form that unholy alliance with the Nation of Islam because they're all fucking scammers,
So Way of the Gun, I looked it up. The year was 2000. And the point I was going to make about that is that's a wonderful joke you guys pulled, but that's what you had to do in the year 2000 because you had to be real subtle about it. That's no longer the case. Now people are always sending me, oh, Tony, did you hear the Scientology joke in this show last night? The Scientology joke. It's so out in the open that Scientology is now fair game, ironically, for all of these shows. And it's the floodgates have opened. But back then, what you guys pulled off was pretty sneaky.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, neither of us saw what was coming. We were just kind of rolling with it and reveling in the hilarity of it all. That's for sure. So did you see the clip?
Yeah, I've got it. I'm going to drop it in for when you're talking about it.
I'm talking about it. Are we talking?
Yeah, no, but I mean, when you first brought it up, well, somewhere in here, I will drop it in.
Oh, you'll drop it in. Awesome.
Yes.
Got it. Hey, listen, Paul Schrader, one of my favorite social media curmudgeons. And, if people are listening, don't know who I'm talking about, Paul Schrader, taxi driver. I mean, need I say more?
Right.
He just posted something very interesting. He posted, if I read the latest SAG announcement correctly, if Tom Cruise attended a charity event and was handed a photo of Ethan Hunt and signed it, that would be the equivalent of crossing a picket line. Now, that's really interesting because there are some hard and fast sort of rules about promoting movies now. And, leave it to Paul to bring that up. But that is a really good question. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, he's definitely doing a dog and pony show on this thing.
Well,
whereas the Oppenheimer people, it's like they're all stepping back and they got a movie going up against Barbie, in the coming days and weeks. So, so much for solidarity. I mean, I can tell you this. There's no question as to whether or not Tom Cruise is a member of the Screen Actors Guild. And the same holds true for Chris McQuarrie, DGA, but that's irrelevant, but certainly Writers Guild of America. Real interesting how they're skating through all this at a promotional level for this movie.
Well,
but then on the other hand, they made a $300 million movie. So it's a long road back from that.
Well, I don't know how it works, but I just know that last year, Top Gun was nominated for Best Picture. And Tom Cruise was a producer on the film. And so if Top Gun had won Best Picture, Tom Cruise would be going up to pick up a statue. And I asked at the time, Luke, could you handicap that for me? What are the chances we're going to have to watch Tom Cruise walk away with an Oscar that night? And he said the chances were very low, and he was right. Yeah. But I wonder if I don't know the structure on Mission Impossible. Is he a producer? So if in the SAG strike started last night, right? So if this weekend he's going on red carpet things, is he going as an actor or is he going as a producer? I don't know how that works.
Right. And the Luke Thompson dubbed Cruise Whisperer, is right alongside him all the way back to their, side-by-side condos in Clearwater. for God's sakes. They're not going to hold back, and they're just going to say, I doubt that. I mean, I'm sure that if it's brought up at a press conference, they're going to, make some some attempt to kind of project solidarity. But give me a break. The rules don't apply to them at those nosebleed tentpole levels. And would you like to hear the true story of Chris McQuarrie's bachelor party?
Oh my goodness.
Well, the reason why I want to tell you this is because he already, Chris put a version of it out.
Okay.
Kevin Pollak, he comedian and one of the co-stars of Usual Suspects, wrote a book, kind of a memoir sort of book, and he went out to people for anecdotes about their experience with him, and I get it. Well, Macquarie weighed in, but he deflected the whole truth. I mean, the whole scenario off himself. It was somebody's bachelor party. I'm going to set the record straight. And sorry, not sorry, Kevin Pollak and Chris McQuarrie, because I organized the bachelor party. I was there. And you're going to hear the true anecdote right now. Chris, I believe, told his wife to be, his fiance, that we were all gonna go karting or something like that, just to keep her, because she was like, "Oh, no sex parties. Oh my God, Ebner's organizing this. We're fucked." And it was all fun and games, right? And what we did is I hired a limousine where everyone in the bachelor party, we all jumped in the limousine. And before that, I had hired a porn star by the name of Selena Del Rey. Look her up. Great body of work. She was going to be at the corner of Sunset and the hotel, the Hyatt on Sunset, where I had rented the presidential suite for the party. She was going to be standing out there posing as a hooker on the street. And the limo driver already got the word that he was going to pick her up. Now, she jumps in the car. We're all going nuts. She's climbing all over us, trying to get to the bachelor boy, right? And to his credit, this is important, Chris was like, hands off. He was getting married. He would enjoy the view, but he wasn't going to physically get into any of this shit. And I applaud him for that. However, we make our way to the presidential suite at the Hyatt. Things are getting out of hand fast. Booze is flowing. Selena Del Rey, she pulls out all stops, in terms of, hooking up, taking off all her clothes, running around, dancing, doing everything but have the bachelor touch her. I can't say that was true for everything else. Cut to the chase. There's an actor. I don't want to be coy, but he's a good friend, and I really like this guy, so I'm not going to say his name. He's not that important. He was one of the core group of friends. He's drunk out of his mind on the couch, okay? And he falls back on the couch, and we've seen this before, where your head goes back, and, you just start fucking passing out a little bit. He was, 3 sheets to the wind with his head like this. Macquarie says to Selena Del Rey, "How much will it cost for you to go take a piss on so-and-so's head?" And she doesn't name a price. We're peeling off hundos all night long. She's doing fine. I say, give her 100 or whatever. He gives her $100 bill, right? She gets up on the couch and straddles like this young actor who's like passed out with his head tilted back, and dumps a bladder load of porn star piss right into his open mouth. And everyone's just like, "Oh God." And then at the same time, we're thinking, does anyone have a camera? Have we memorialized this? And then that's when Kevin Pollak walked in. And he literally walked in as she was dumping her bladder into the mouth of this poor unsuspecting actor. And I can't do him justice, but Kevin did one of these. Well, there's someone who's not running for public office anytime soon. And we just all hit the fucking floor. And that's the true story. That's the true anecdote. And, I need to be a guardian of truth in these situations.
Mark, it's just, I know how dedicated you are to the truth, getting to the truth.
Oh, man. I'm such a fucking stoner. You know what I did the other day? I was doing one of these crime shows, and unrelated, by the way. And, 3 hours in the chair, I'm like at the end of my rope. And they asked me a question like, so what do you think it was that drove this man to commit this heinous, brutal murder? And I go, I don't know, but maybe he was friends with the fancy persuasion. Now, do you know what I was saying there? The little Easter egg I was throwing in? It's a song by Ace. It was called How Long in the 70s, 80s. How long has this been going on? And then you're friends with the fancy persuasion. And for some reason, I had that lyric in my head.
Yes, yes.
So I threw it in as my Easter egg. And nobody blinked. So they just kept running tape. So maybe that'll actually make the show. I can't divulge the network, but speaking of shows and speaking of the pool boy,
yes,
Giancarlo Granda, myself, and Tom Arnold are almost set to do a road show called the Holy Shit Show. SH asterisk T, the Holy Shit Show, God forbid, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to go on the road as starting in Louisville in mid-August. We're going to do a road show. And it ought to be pretty good only because we are on the cusp. Within 2 weeks, we are going to see Jerry Falwell Jr.'s entire legacy go right down the shitter because the federal government, Department of Education, is about to come down with unprecedented fines against that institution, that cult, that it became, radicalized evangelicals, Liberty University. They are going to get hit so hard that I can only say, holy shit, and let's take it on the road. So that's what I'm up to.
That's that's only like 3 weeks from now. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, if we pull it off in Louisville, perhaps we'll, roll on through the country.
I hope you come to New York.
Yeah, man. So do we. So it's a little premature to announce that, but we do have a backer in Louisville, and that's why he wants to start it there. And I would love to do one of those shows in Lynchburg, Virginia, right in the city, of the hometown of, that cuck Jerry Falwell Jr. and his sociopathic wife. What better venue? Then we'll hit Miami. I don't know. But the summer is shaping up to be a really good time.
That's fantastic, man. And then tell me about your podcast too. What's been going on with that?
That's really, it's a combination labor of love and me getting serious about podcasting. In my other attempts, it was hit or miss. I do a good one, a great one, and then I do some shit. Because I'm only, I'm into a cheap mic and, just fucking around out there. What I did was I got with my old radio producer, a woman named Mickey Ramos. She knows me better than anybody. She produced my old radio show. We're back together again 23 years later, and she learned podcasting. She bought the equipment, and she's producing the fuck out of basically what it is it's a triptych through my career. And at the very least, we will have archived the how I got those stories, but we're doing it in such a way, like, I've got 6 Degrees of Paris Hilton broken down into 6 episodes.
Wow.
I've got my year at the tabloids, at National Enquirer, and everything, I did and went through there. That'll be 3 episodes. So we're banking these, and the goal is to release them all at once. And who knows, maybe taking the cue from some of the brighter minds in entertainment right now, perhaps if the stories work and they hold their own, which I believe they do, otherwise I wouldn't be sitting here. Who knows what we can do with that in terms of exploitation. I mean, with deepfake technology now, you could have me at any age walking through the story in living color.
That's
based
true.
on a photograph of
Right,
me.
right.
And I'll tell you, a lot of people, I don't want to bust anybody, but some people are not only submitting to artificial intelligence and deep fakery, but they are also committing themselves to it creatively. And it's a whole new world. It's going to be crazy. And quick plug, as a guardian of my own copyrights and intellectual property, as much as I can get excited about artificial intelligence, I also own a piece of a company called Union, which is essentially artificial intelligence. I got with a group out of Austin, Texas. I got a very small piece. The website is welcometounion.com. And we have sophisticated software that can detect artificial intelligence. And it's not a come on. The guy who developed this software is the former head of tech security at the New York Times and Indeed. We got the guy who knows how to do it. And, if anybody wants to try it, first one is on us, and we'll certify your work, your script, your book, anything you want to send us. We'll run it through the machinery. And if we can certify that it is non-AI. And, hopefully that'll take off. But like any business venture, you're only as good as your marketing. And right now, it's war. We're in the middle of a war right now, so I don't know where we'll fit in, but I know we have in the words of Scientology, we have the right technology at the right time. God damn it.
Well, you look like you're doing great, man. It's so fun to talk to you. And
likewise, let's just never lose our sense of humor. I'm with the world, with this country, with so many people. I was thinking the other day, about the cult mentality, the cult of Trump and MAGA and all that, and how it relates to, the cult that we have individually made a good part of our life's work. I thought of Stephen Hassan, cult expert. And I thought, my God, there's really only one man who I've sat with before and interviewed at length, on the Philip Gale story in Cambridge. And I never met a more kind and sort of, he's the opposite of me. He doesn't get outraged. He sees, understands cult mind control so well that, we're going to need an army of Stephen Hassans out there, to break this fucking spell, because, it's just, I think, the MAGA, the QAnon, I think they're all in too deep to raise the white flag when all evidence suggests that, yeah, it might be about time. You know what I mean? And, what do you think about cult exit counseling on a mass scale? How do you get Stephen Hassan's message across?
That's a
Or
good
do we?
question. I mean, that's a good question. I mean, it's evolved over the years, and I know one of the things that I hear from Hassan and also Rick Ross is, it's not easy to get somebody stuck in one of those groups to get out. And I am always curious when I'm talking to ex-Scientologists, asking them, what was it for you? What got you? I know that I think both Hassan and Ross talk about, if you can get them thinking about ways in which they agree that the leader was wrong about something, just anything, really, was Hubbard right about everything? And it's hard. It's hard to get them to think of any example. And I know Steve has written a book about the cult of Trump, and I think he probably feels the same way about that too. Is, can you think of ways, especially with QAnon? I mean, QAnon is so fascinating to me because everything they predicted has been wrong. And yet these people are still so dedicated to it. I don't, every single prediction turns out not to be true. But it's like that conspiracy mind thinking is so fluid, and you can always, well, if that's not true, it's because this other thing is making us think it's not true. You know what I mean? There's always a way to see it in a way that it just reinforces what you believe to begin with. It's
Right.
mad.
And
It's
also, in terms of playbooks, I guarantee you that, when you get into you're a pedophile, no, you're a pedophile, the cult of Hollywood pedophilia. And believe me, I have legit grudges and work that I've accomplished, taking down real pedophiles, to the point where I believe that, if you pull back the layers of those QAnon people, that's where you're going to find a lot of pedophiles throwing up a smoke screen for their own behavior. I guarantee it, because that movement, remember, there's a certain sector of society that fucking is all in for Trump, and those are the criminals themselves. Those are the racketeers, the con men, the convicts who can't get hired out of prison. They thrive in Trump style chaos, and that's why it's so dangerous. That's why there's a body count. That's so it's really disturbing. And I know it's a broader and bigger issue than what we've been talking about, but
there's a lot of connections. I mean, there's some really interesting connections between Scientology and QAnon, which I've tried to keep an eye on. And
yeah,
it's the same in both of them. It's the same kind of thinking, though, that I think a lot of it has to do with people wanting to be part of a larger narrative. In other words, people are frustrated in some way with their lives. They don't want to accept kind of what their situation is and who they are. Now, you and I are the kind of people that well, we just change it. We do what we can to make things better or whatever. We fight and claw our way. But for other people,
yeah, but that's more true with you than it is with me, because honestly, I have to admit, all these years, as as loud and antagonistic as I am, honestly, I've been going about it the wrong way. Because, truth be told, if I had half the compassion that you or Stephen Hassan or, I should have taken the cue way back when Tori Chrisman got onto the internet and was shown nothing but love. At the end of the day, that's what worked with her.
yeah,
And yet, I'm just too much of a fucking animal with a grudge, to let these cults get away with their shit on my watch. And in the meantime, I disregard the victims. And, so it's been a long, long learning spell, but I'm finally at a place where I can admit that, yeah, I'm good for a fucking soundbite, but at the end of the day, am I really helping the cause of, helping to counsel out actual, no, they think I'm crazy, and rightfully so. They get
Yeah, but
Who's that guy
I
yelling in
mean,
the street corner?
I just heard today from somebody that was so grateful for some coverage that I did. It had nothing to do with counseling people, or I mean, just they like the spotlight we put on these controversies and abuses. That there's definitely that's part of the whole thing that needs to be done here. That this organization it needs to be investigated. That's all. I'm not an activist. I'm not. I just want to show what this organization does, and it's other people's job to do something about it. But I hear from people all the time that say how valuable this kind of work is. So, yeah, I get that way too. I get frustrated. I get a little angry. Maybe not as much as you, but I think I think that's definitely an important part of what needs to be done with Scientology and showing people what it is, showing people what it is, what it does to people is, being loud and being a loudmouth about it. I think I'm like you. I'm not great at the other part where it's like being the counselor and helping people out. That's that other people do better at that. And you pointed out somebody, and then I can think of some other people as well. They're very patient. They're very helpful. It's hard for you and me, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's hard to also. Well, it's difficult. It's hard to make that connection. I mean, I'm not. I haven't. I'm not. Batting zero. I mean, I have helped usher people out of Scientology. The late Charlie Black. His name means nothing to anybody but me and some close friends. Going back to the circle that originated with Chris McQuarrie. Chris ever listens to this. Charlie Black, he left us too soon, but both of us helped him get out of Scientology. So it is amazing to me that whereas I have no idea if you're a Scientologist or not, but Luke Thompson, Cruise Whisperer, man, you guys are practically sleeping together, for God's sakes. I mean, I wonder what goes on at that apartment. You think there's any grab ass going on there? I don't know. I mean, if you love money, those two guys have more money than God right now. So they must be like giddy like schoolgirls at a fucking Sadie Hawkins dance over the fact that there's nothing else out there, spare Indiana Jones and the specter of Barbie, to stop them from making billions of dollars off a stupid movie.
Well,
I don't know.
Claire Hadley told me something really interesting. I did a podcast with her. I think it was like my second podcast I did last year to start this thing. And she told me one day they were at Int Base, and Miscavige said to her that Tom Cruise gives all of his producer credit money to the church. Now, see, Scientology celebrates big donors, but you rarely ever see an actor on there. The only time you ever see an actor is like Nancy Cartwright and what's her name, Judy Norton. But
come on, the lady of the plaques, Gay Ribisi.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true. That's true.
Well, she had 3 of those plaques.
That's right. But
yeah.
I think Cruz probably, the other celebrities, don't give me a plaque, don't give me a trophy, don't put me in the magazine, right?
Right.
But Claire said, Miscavige said right in front of her that Cruz donates the money he makes as a producer on these films. So I mean, that's, oh my God, Top Gun. Think about how much money I made on Top Gun. So
those producer fees are they're outrageous to begin with. But if they follow the money, then that's a constant revenue stream to help Scientology stay afloat to the point where they can buy up more real estate.
Well, they have tons of money. There's just no question. They have billions. And so that's why, even though the membership seems to be shrinking still, they're not going anywhere, Mark, which is which is amazing.
I know, and I've every year I think this could be the end, but it's sort of like I guess I should have realized this around Operation Snow White. I should have seen the writing on the wall. because if they could, they succeeded in getting the US government to fucking buckle. I mean, wow. There's not much coming back from that. It's like, what I mean, the IRS today, if they tried to come back and they'd have to pay a lot of reparations, crazy shit. But I'm with you. We'll be talking about this, for until God knows when.
Well, it's always fun to talk to you about this stuff.
It was, yeah, man, yeah.
I called you because I wanted to talk about Tom Cruise in this movie, and we ended up focusing on his buddy more, and that was great. It's amazing.
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen. I do hope you find a good spot to drop that clip from The Way of the Gun in there.
I will.
And I feel good about our chat, mainly because we didn't, we found some new stuff to talk about, and that's always that makes for the best podcast, Tony.
Thank you
keep
so
it
much.
up.
All right.
Shoot me a link and I'll do my thing with it. Although I'm shadow banned on Twitter, so I can't guarantee any action there, but oh well.
We'll do our best. All right,
All right,
man.
man.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
Later,
it.
Tony. Bye.
Talk to you later.